Bismillah, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا. من يهد الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له. أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. All praise to Allah. We seek His aid and His assistance and ask His forgiveness. We seek refuge in Allah from the evil of our souls and from the evil of our actions. Whomever Allah guides, no one will be able to mislead him. Whomever He leads, nobody can guide him. I testify that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah alone without partner, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is His messenger, His slave and messenger. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Rabbi shrah li sadri wa yassir li amri wahlul uqdatan min lisani yafqahu qawli. Going to switch off my notifications, going off in the background. May Allah today bless us with a deeper understanding of how we may seek His pleasure and His blessing through our parenting. May we be guided to raise our children in the best way, the most pleasing way to Him, and may Allah make our changes easy for us, and may He make our task easy for us, and may He guide our children and make them pious and pleasing to Him. Ameen. Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, sisters. So for those of you who've just joined me, my name is Coach Amina. I'm a parenting coach, and I'm doing a 4-week course that I wanted to release for you guys, just to give you an idea of what I call the Taqwa model of parenting, and how by bringing this in, it can completely transform the way you are with your children, and it can overcome many of the problems that you have been emailing me about. Even now, the emails are still coming in with the sort of struggles that you're having. And by bringing in this model of parenting, you will find that these problems become easier and easier for you to handle, that the way forward just becomes clearer. We get caught in many fogs, in kind of moments, sticky moments, where we don't know where to go. And I'm hoping that by introducing the model to you today, it will open a door for you that will change your parenting as well as the rest of the relationships in your life. It's a big statement, I know, but let's follow through the presentation and you'll see what I mean. This is, as I say, a 4-week course. And so in the first week today, we're going to be looking at what is the Taqwa model of parenting. Okay, so before answering all the questions and the queries, it's almost like just stepping back and looking at the model of parenting and what model are we following. Often we end up, you find yourself repeating the patterns you've seen in your own childhood. So you end up reacting as you've seen, others react, your parents, for example. Sometimes that's great, sometimes that's not so great. There's things you want to change. Of course, we're all looking back on our childhood with the lens of, how can I do it better? But we're all still, with that in mind, doing the best we can. Everyone who is here is doing the best that they can with what they know. So today, inshallah, I hope to introduce something to you that will help you look at parenting slightly different, and in that, help you to do it better. Week 2. How to change your child's behavior. Now, this is a big one I get asked all the time. How am I going to change my child's behavior? Because I've told them 100 times and they don't listen. They don't listen unless I shout. And it gets to the point where if only they would listen, everything would be okay. So if that's one of your struggles, then we'll cover that in week 2, inshallah. Week 3, the best way to connect with your child. Now, again, a lot of the questions that come up are around this, the connection, the trust, the relationship. My child isn't talking to me. My child is disconnected to me. Or you're struggling to connect with your child. You know, it's really hard sometimes to just play with them at their level. I often say to my clients, enter their world. And that is the struggle. Connecting with them, entering their world, finding somewhere to meet in the middle. Because often we make children meet us where we're at. Come and help me, you know, in the kitchen. Come and help me do what I'm doing, and bring them to our world. And that is great. And we can connect, yes, from there. But connecting where we can meet them at their world, and also where we can have a good relationship, where trust is the foundation, and you feel close to each other. So that's week 3, inshallah. Week 4, inshallah, I'm going to be talking to you more about mastering your mind so that you can transform your parenting. Now, to do this over a short period is going to be tricky because I spend a year training my clients to do this. But I will do my best to give you the crux of what I teach and how you can master your mind to transform your parenting. So let's begin, inshallah, with why I call this model of parenting Taqwa parenting. Taqwa comes from the word waqa, which means to guard against, to protect, to preserve, to safeguard, to shield, and to keep, to shelter, and to keep. So therefore, when we're talking about having taqwa, it is to protect ourselves from what angers Allah. Some scholars define taqwa as placing a protective barrier between yourself and Allah's punishment. It also means doing what Allah has enjoined and avoiding that which Allah has forbidden. Now, most of you probably already know that, but why bring it into your parenting, right? Why is this important? If you think about having this awareness of Allah and trying to safeguard ourselves from Allah's punishment, yes, of course, that the more we're aware of Allah, the less we will do the things that displease Allah. For example, you know, shouting, losing our temper, maybe insulting, maybe cursing, a lot of the struggles that people have. Yes, we want to be more, you know, safeguard ourselves and protect ourselves when we're parenting. And I think these sort of things everyone is aware of, right? But bringing an awareness of Allah, a greater awareness of Allah, and protecting yourself and staying within the boundaries is one aspect. But we often do this just relating to our bad behavior. Or we may bring it to the point where we're saying to the child, you know, Allah will punish you, or, you know, we can also bring an awareness of Allah, but in a positive or a negative way, the love of Allah versus the punishment of Allah, and the balance there that needs to be had. And I want to talk to you about that, you know, when we're talking about changing your child's behavior, and the very important balance of kind of instilling the love of Allah and then the fear of Allah. Often if we have too much love of Allah and less fear, perhaps it doesn't regulate us to regulate our behavior as adults when we grow up. So we might not take some of the things that Allah has forbidden as seriously because we have more of the love of Allah and less of the fear. But then on the flip side, we may have too much of the fear of Allah, and everything is driven from a place of fear and punishment. But then often when I'm working with clients, I see that they're often stuck in feeling like they're not forgiven and feeling that distance from Allah because they feel like they're being punished, you know, for those difficulties, but also that they're not forgiven. And this feeling of not being forgiven serves to be a real barrier between someone and Allah. So getting the balance right between the love and the fear is really important. And we will talk about this in week 2, inshallah. But, just how we present Allah to our children is very, very important. Now, where does it go wrong? Even though we're aware of Allah, we know that our children are an amana to us, it doesn't stop us from behaving in a difficult way and our children behaving in a difficult way and being able to manage that. What you often find is your child has a meltdown, but then so does the parent, and in the end, everyone is just exhausted and frustrated and no one knows where to go. And we want to move past that, inshallah. So where does bringing taqwa into your parenting comes in? Well, let me tell you where the opposite can happen, where without realizing we innocently fail to teach our children about Allah in who He is, right? So what happens is sometimes the parent might say, child gets hurt, let mommy make it better, right? But then to the child, they start thinking in the way that it's mommy who makes me better. It's mummy that does that. Mummy has the power to make me better. So I remember even coaching a sister a while ago, and she had an absolute fear that her mum would die because she always went to see her mum, and her mum was well, alhamdulillah, but she would always need her mum when she was ill because she had it so deeply ingrained in her mind that it's her mum that makes her feel better. However, as we grow up, we learn that Allah is a Shafi, the one who heals. Yes, there is some comfort you feel from your parent, but for a child, that reliance, that over-reliance on the human person, as opposed to Allah, can lead to all sorts of internal struggles. The other way, and there's many ways that this happens, but I'm giving you 2 examples. The other way that it can happen is we make it that our child has to listen to us, has to obey us. Yes, we want them to listen to us, but sometimes we can put it where whether I'm right or wrong, whether I'm doing the right thing, whether I'm showing you a good example, you have to listen to me. Now that gets really confusing for a child because at that point, they're not only encouraged to blind follow, but they're also seeing a parent as the authority as opposed to Allah. You see, as parents, we make mistakes, and we misjudge it. We issue harsh punishments. We set rules that we go back on. We often find that we don't get it right first time. That's just part of parenting. It's a journey. But when we make ourselves the ultimate authority for our child, it leads to difficulty later on when they stopped questioning what is right and wrong and what I should follow. It becomes very easy for them, for example, to just follow their friends, not to question what their friends are doing, but just to go along and question and just follow. Now, we don't want our children challenging us all the time, but the reason that but there's a fine balance between listening, even if I'm wrong, and listening and not challenging. And the fine balance is this: if your child puts you in a position of authority, then your rules won't make sense to them. It can never, because sometimes we're going to just be figuring it out along the way. If you have more than one child, your rules from the first are very different from the last. And when they see the rules keep swapping and changing, their idea of authority starts to become skewed. Like either they won't respect authority, they won't follow the rules, they'll seek to bend the rules, or they'll just blindly follow and stop questioning the rules. But all of these are very key as they're growing up into adults in order to be able to follow the right path. But if we make the authority Allah, well, that's always going to be, and in our deen there's flexibility, 100% there's flexibility, right? But when we make it that our authority is Islam, that's going to be consistent. That is an authority that you can accept. That authority will keep you grounded too. How does a child get caught as well? When a child starts to think, have you ever heard a child say, oh, Mummy, who will take care of me when you die? Around the age of about, 6, 7, 8, often children can become really fixated on death and worrying what will happen if my mummy dies. This can be often really distressing for a child. Why? Because they put you in a position of Allah. For them, you give them everything. You provide for them. You take care of them. They don't see Allah. They see you. So they know that Allah exists, but that's a bit abstract for them because they see that you are doing the job of Allah. You're the one doing everything for them. You give them everything. So when a child starts becoming really attached to you, taking care of their every single need, they also start seeing you in a position innocently that they need you, and without you, they're not going to be okay. So there's Allah, but I need my mum, and without my mum, I'm not going to be okay. Now, of course, we all want our mums, and we're all very, it's a relationship that there is a need there for our parents and our mum especially, but it's Allah we need. So I'll talk to you about how you can talk to your child about that when those situations happen and those questions get asked. Another way is, again, the child looking at the one who protects them, being their parent. You're the one. And you'll often hear them use phrases as they're growing up. You're the one. You're the one who does this to me. You're the one. You're the one. You're the one. And again, you're the one. The flag, the red flag kind of is there with the idea where they're already formatting in your mind, in their mind, you're the one. You're the one that does everything for me. Now, for a parent, though that is nice that you're valued by your child, I'll talk to you in a minute about how that can cause difficulty along the way if they see you as the one who is my everything. So here's why we need to bring a deeper understanding of Allah into our parenting. Because the key relationship in your life is your relationship with Allah, any human being. Okay? Any human being, yours, your child's, any human being. There are 3 key relationships: your relationship with Allah, your relationship with yourself, and your relationship with other people. If your relationship with Allah suffers, then all your relationships will suffer. You see, every relationship begins and ends except the one with Allah. So not only being aware of Allah will keep you as a parent in check, but if you focus on your relationship with Allah and teach your child to do the same, they will find that the rest of their life will be easy and there will be less struggle. Also, another reason for bringing the Taqwa model of parenting into your parenting is it's a means of solving your parenting problems, right? I'm going to refer to this ayah in Surah Rad, وَأَعُوذُ بِاللَّهِ مِنَ الشَّيْطَانِ الرَّجِيمِ بِسْمِ اللَّهِ الرَّحْمَنِ الرَّحِيمِ, just the last bit. أَلَا بِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ تَطْمَئِنُّ الْقُلُوبُ. In that part, Allah says, only by the remembrance, there are some translations, but what's that mean? By thinking, the process of thinking of Allah, hearts are secured. Now let me expand on that. The process of thinking, there's 2 ways that we can do dhikr. That's either by uttering, where you're just saying it from your tongue. And we often do that when we're even just saying Bismillah before we do something. Often it's just an act of our tongue, or when we're making tasbih. Or we're actually thinking about Allah with our hearts. And when you do that, when you're just saying, Alhamdulillah, I'm okay, and when you really feel it, when you're saying Bismillah, when you're just saying it with your tongue, or when you are really feeling that connection with Allah, you're really aware of Allah, you're making that intention for what you're doing. So here we're talking about that thinking, that actual connecting your heart with Allah. There are times when you might be going through difficulty and you're thinking and you're just thinking and you're in your head and you're kind of talking to Allah, but you're in your head. And then there's times when you really talk to Allah from your heart and you really feel that connection and you really feel you're making dua sincerely and you're really opening up. And that gives you a real sense of security. So when you deeply connect with Allah in your heart, Allah says, only by doing that will you find security, comfort, reassurance. But we have to think good of Allah. So if in the struggle we're thinking, why did Allah give me this child? Why is this child, why Allah are you punishing me like this? Why Allah? And we question, why is this happening to me? Why didn't it go this way? When we're thinking like that, or I'm not going to cope, and not thinking that actually Allah will not give you more than you can cope with. So it's not just thinking about Allah, but thinking good of Allah. Allah will not give me more than I can bear. There is good in everything that happens to me. Allah is with me. I am not alone. Allah is taking care of me. When we think good of Allah in a situation, in an actual problem, you will find such comfort and security that you won't find anywhere else. So if you can now bring that remembrance of Allah into your parenting struggles, not only will you not feel as frustrated and as angry and as lost and in despair, but you will find that the solutions and the clarity will come, because in that place of discomfort and insecurity, we get really emotional and really foggy. Only when we calm down from that emotion, that high emotion state, can we see clearly. Oh, okay, that's what he needs. Oh, that's what's going on. Oh, so it really does help to calm you down, so that once you do and you're feeling secure, the solutions become very clear for you, clear and easy. The third reason to bring in this model of parenting, there's many, subhanAllah, I'm just picking a few, is I want to talk to you about the journey of life for your child. So I've talked to you about how parents can mistakenly put themselves in the position of Allah when they are, saying, obey me, respect me, I'll make it better. These are traits powers that only Allah has. And if we're able to do them for our child, it is only by the permission of Allah. In fact, without Allah, we can't even blink. So when we mistakenly put ourselves in, kind of reinforce that idea for our child, none of us are doing it on purpose, but I want to bring it to everyone's attention. It's really important that we see it. And so when we mistakenly reinforce that idea for our child, and our child has formed the idea of you're my everything, you're the one who provides, who protects, who heals, who takes care of me, who makes sure that I'm okay, who's going to take care of my future, who's going to, when we reinforce that idea and our child kind of has that idea and they're constantly reinforcing it, difficulty is they put especially their mothers, but their parents, almost in the position of Allah for them. Like, they know Allah is there, but my parent is everything. Now, you form those beliefs really early in your childhood, so you're not even aware of it, to be honest. You just have this deep attachment and reliance upon your parents in a way where you're not okay if something happens to them. Right? Of course, we love them. I've lost a parent myself, so I know you're not going to never not miss your parent. But there's a difference between missing them and and appreciating them and loving them and wanting to be with them, and needing them because you're not okay without them. So when a child puts you in that position, they also put you in a position where they expect you to be perfect. And you all know we are far from perfect because we are human beings. We are created to make mistakes and to sin. So we will make mistakes. I don't know if you remember, any of you, along your journey while you were growing up, that there's a point that you reach where you're thinking, I didn't know that my parents made mistakes like that. I didn't realize that they did that, or they did this, or they don't really follow the rules, or they don't do what they say. There's a moment on the journey of life where you realize that even though you thought they were everything, that they're not perfect, right? We also get to the point where we start focusing on, I need my parents to be happy with me. So you're doing all sorts of things that are detrimental to the rest of your life, maybe kind of out of balance, because your sole goal is just to make your parents happy with you. And no matter what you do, it's not enough, because actually that's just the way it works in most cases, because we always can have high expectations, and that expectation is of something and someone who is perfect. So no one really meets that standard. Just as children can think of their parents as perfect, parents can want perfect children too. And so we can get ourselves into such difficulties as adults when we form these beliefs as a child, but we're not even aware of it. But it's just the way that we look up to our parents and the way we think of them. But then when you start realizing they're not, there's a disappointment that comes through that. And then unless you reconcile that as an adult and think, well, of course they're going to make mistakes. Of course they're going to do certain things because they're human. There's a moment where you realize that actually they're just human. And at that point, whatever hurt you're carrying, whatever disappointment, whatever struggle, that passes. But sometimes we don't do that. We haven't realized even at that point in our early, late teens, early 20s, to then kind of accept that they're humans, but Allah is perfect. Allah is my everything. I'm still okay because I have my everything. That's Allah. I'm still okay because my parents might not be perfect, but Allah is perfect. I'm still okay because even if whatever I do, my parents aren't pleased with me, Allah is pleased with me and sees what I do. So there's a moment we hand over to Allah, but that can sometimes happen or it doesn't happen, and we keep struggling through life. And then they get to a point where they're older, and if you still have that disappointment or that letdown or that hurt, taking care of them in their old age becomes quite difficult because you're doing it out of duty, but it might not come from the same place as you're doing it because you really, really, really want to do it. I'm not saying we don't, but there's a difference in doing it out of duty but still having resentment, or doing it out of mercy and love and no resentment. So having our children have it clear in their mind who we are and where we fit in, and who Allah is and where He fits in our lives, is really, really important. It's critical to your journey of life. It is the number one reasons that people struggle. All of my clients that come to me, this is one of the key struggles that they have. The biggest struggle. But not realizing that when they were younger, they formed beliefs about their parents and what their parents said to them, and that meant that it was true. So often what we do as well as a child is we take it that whatever my parent says to me, that is the truth. But only Allah is the truth, al-haq. But when we take it as that's the truth, a parent only has to say, oh, I don't know, you're useless, or you're so, you're not going to be very good at this. I don't know, the sort of things that parents can sometimes say. And they take that to mean that's the truth about them. And that's it. They define their life by that truth that they've taken, assuming that everything that a parent says is the absolute truth. So what we want to do is hand over to Allah from as early as possible, right? For example, when my 4-year-old gets hurt, even my 2-year-old, actually, I still say it to her. Whenever anyone gets hurt, I'll say, come over, let's make dua together for Allah to make you better, and mummy will kiss it for you. So I very much distinguish what is in Allah's power and what is in my power. So that's really clear to them. In the same way, when I'm disciplining them or teaching them, I will make it about that they should be always pleasing me, but about it being pleasing to Allah. Do you think Allah will be pleased with what happened? For example, do you think Allah would be pleased if you did it in a different way? What do you think Allah would be pleased with? How could you do it differently so that Allah will be pleased? And making it about the pleasure of Allah and not mine. Because another thing that we get really caught in as adults is people pleasing. But right from the beginning, if we can make it about pleasing Allah, and that's consciously what the child is always asking themselves, that, inshallah, will help us a lot along the journey of life and our children. In the same way, when my third child, mashallah, I have 5, so I just talk about all of them in the sessions. But yeah, my third child was asking me, he got really, really, after my dad passed away, he got very scared that one day I would pass away and what would happen to him. And it used to keep him up at night. And once I'd understood this, like I kept saying, no, Mummy's going to be fine, and inshallah I'll be fine, and I just kept trying to reassure him, but it wasn't going for him because he wasn't convinced that I could control not dying. What he wanted to know was, would he be fine? So what I then realized to say to him, and how what settled his heart was actually teaching him that, yeah, okay, I pray that Allah keeps me with you for a long time, but if he takes me away, he is always still with you, and he will be the one who takes care of you and protects you. He will send people to do everything that you need. Allah will always take care of your needs, and he will send you people to take care of your needs. So you don't have to worry. I know I'll miss you and you'll miss me, but you're always going to be okay, even if I'm not here, because you have Allah. And Allah will send you what you need, and Allah will send you people to give you whatever you need. And so in that way, helping your child to place their well-being in Allah. Am I going to be okay? That's always the question for a child. It's like their natural survival instinct. So yeah, they're going to need you to reassure them that no matter what, when they turn to Allah, they will be okay. It's taking them back to that surah, to the surah, the ayah I've just shared with you, Surah Rad, where when they take it back to Allah, whatever problem they have, they'll know they're okay. They'll know Allah's taking care of it for them. They'll know that their provision's coming from Ar-Razaq, or they'll know that, Al-Wali, their protecting friend is always going to be protecting them. And in these moments, teach them about the names of Allah, so that they can, it firms that knowledge for them, that belief that, yes, it's Allah who's going to make sure I'm okay. Now, how are we doing for time? Let me check. Okay, let me continue with the last bits that I have to share. I think we'll be able to get through it. We might have a little bit less time for the questions and answers, but I'm hoping that today, instead of raising the questions that you have just about the individual problems you're having, I'd like you to step out and look at your parenting model first. Because when we get the framework right, we'll have a different framework to answer those questions within. So first of all, we need to get the framework right, inshallah. So one of the 3 biggest parenting traps that we fall into, where we fail to bring consciousness of Allah, you know, within our parenting, you know, being careful not to overstep the boundaries. When we say protecting ourselves from Allah's punishment and anger, protecting ourselves from the boundaries of presenting ourselves in a way that, or seeing ourselves in a way that only Allah can, you know, can, the tasks that only Allah can do, the things that are only within Allah's powers. Sometimes we overstep the boundaries of what we can do and what Allah can do, and we need to protect ourselves from overstepping that boundary. We also need to protect our children from not relying upon us more than they rely upon Allah, and making Allah the reason for their choices and for their well-being and for their security. So it's about safeguarding yourself and safeguarding your child in every moment. Oh, I've gone backwards. Let's go forward. So the first one, we often as parents attach everything to the outcome. So we get really attached to the outcome. Like, I'm doing this. I'm not going to shout. I'm going to speak nicely. I'm doing this. Why are they not listening? Right? Or I've been doing it, you know, I've done my best and I've done this and I've done this and I've done this. So why is it that my child isn't this, you know, why am I not getting the results? We often get really stuck on, I'm making the effort. Why am I not getting the results? And the thing is here, what's really important to be aware of, and it reminds me of the ayah in Surah Baqarah, ayah 155 to 156, where Allah says, surely He will test you with loss of fruits. That's loss of fruits of your efforts. So sometimes you'll make the effort and you'll get the result you want by the permission of Allah. Sometimes you'll make the effort and you will be tested by not getting the result you want. Because at the end of the day, it reminds us that only Allah is in control. We can make our effort, but we have no control over the results. If Allah wills, it happens, and if Allah wills, it doesn't happen. Because only Allah guides the heart. Our job's just to convey the message. But we don't want that. That often we don't realize that that's not enough for us. Conveying the message is not enough. I've told you, and there you go. We want to see that you've taken it on board and you've changed and you're doing it. And that can be very pressured when then we don't see that result. There's nothing wrong with wanting to see the result. The problem comes when we become attached to the result, so much so that that's what fuels our anger and our frustration and our despair. Whereas if you can see it that you make your effort, you make dua, you expect good of Allah, and you're doing your best for the sake of Allah, but the results are with Allah, then suddenly your parenting is a lot less pressured. You see, sometimes, and I'll make the point here that you probably all know families which are very practicing and raise their children, you know, in the deen, you know, even memorize Quran, did it in the ideal model way that we can imagine. Yet, sadly, you hear stories of those sometimes children leaving the deen regardless. Or you hear children who are as young as 12, 13, 14, 15, leaving, you know, taking, who come from a non-Muslim family, but who then embrace Islam. So is it always just what the parent does? No. It's not always just what the parent does. Yes, what we do has a huge part to play in the beliefs and the ideas that the child has, but Allah is the turner of the hearts, and Allah is the one who guides the heart. And nothing can override that. So taking off the pressure of the results, you will find that your parenting calms down a lot. But by expecting that because I've made the effort, I should get the results, is where sometimes we're taking our role, our capacity as a parent a bit too far. One of the second struggles that we get into as parents is losing hope, right? We can really start, I'm sure everyone knows when I say that you've imagined your child's entire future. And the thing is, it's sometimes, you know, before they're born, in the most perfect life ever, having everything that you didn't have, having it in such a way that, you know, everything goes smoothly for them. They're not tested. It's not really difficult. And
who's Rashid? Who's who? Rashid's the one in the white shirt.
Sorry, I just, sisters, please keep yourself muted. Yeah, so you can often find that the example of a lie, right? A child who tells a lie. Have you ever noticed how in that moment, especially if it's your first child or the beginning of this journey for you, where not only are you telling your child off for that one lie, but you are telling them off not just for lying, but for becoming a liar, coming out of the fold of Islam, and then somehow that leading to your failure as a parent as well. That you telling them off becomes so pressured by this imaginary future you've created that does not exist. In fact, how many of you lied as a child? It didn't mean you fell out the fold of Islam. In fact, it's something that all children do. And we'll talk about behavior in the future, in the future sessions, and how we can help avoid lying by the way we parent them, because why children lie. But they are going to do that. And very young children, in fact, they lie because their imagination is so strong. They really believe it to be true. So in their mind, they're not lying. They want this, you know, they want it to be that they didn't break it, the glass on the table, and they really don't want to be the one that broke it, so much so that they believe it. And so often very young children, they're not even lying. They really believe that it wasn't them, it couldn't be them, it wasn't me. Oh, it wasn't me. So these things will happen in parenting. The more we understand how the child's mind works, the easier it is to deal with it. But when we don't, and we get fixated on kind of like creating a huge story out of it and what's now going to happen. It's always going to be like this. You're never going to listen. You're going to be like this. You're going to be like that. And often we vocalize that with children, right? But then if a child feels that you don't believe in them, that good things will happen, they think that you are the truth. You speak truth. They will believe that, and you will see that their life becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. So often we feel it, we act on it in pressure. You know, we really pressurize where the child kind of like, not pressurize the child, but our action, our dealing with that behavior becomes very pressured. And often we can even say what we're thinking and the child believes it. So be very, be aware of that, but taking it back to Allah, what's in Allah's control and what's in your power and what's in Allah's power is only Allah knows the future. You don't know what's going to happen. But Allah is as you think of him. So if you imagine a great future for your child, then Allah is as you think of him, and that's probably what's going to happen. But if you imagine that your child is going to end up failing in life, we'll talk about the self-fulfilling prophecy and how this really plays out in life. But you'll find that the child may start believing that they're going to fail and then never try for the opportunities that could come their way. So remember, the future is with Allah, and catch yourself doing that and hold yourself back. Only Allah knows, and think good of Allah. The third point and the final point before we end today is one of the other struggles that parents have is they try and seek to control the child, right? They want that child to listen to them, to obey them, to do it the way they want, do it now, right now. Again, there's almost this idea that they're an extension of us, that they should just do what we tell them and they're just going to listen. But remember, my sisters, there is no compulsion in Islam. And Allah gave every human being free will, the choice, the power to choose. So you might find that, especially around the age of 2, and I got a few questions about this late last night. Sorry, I'm not able to answer all your questions. The messages were still coming in this morning, so I'm not going to be able to look at them, until afterwards. But, 2-year-olds suddenly exerting their authority. No, no, no. Why? It's not because they've become naughty. They've just suddenly discovered they've got the power to say no. And that's great. Let me try it. No, no, no. That's all that's happening. But we could end up thinking the whole future, oh my gosh, they're never going to listen to me. No, They're just suddenly exercising that new power. And in that moment, you know, some things you'll give and some things you'll fight, and you'll pick your battles, as they say, right? Some things they want to know, they've got the power to choose. And that's empowering for them. But other things that they don't have the power to choose, because actually it's not good for them. It's not good for their safety, their well-being. It's not good for, you know, it's just, you can't say yes to everything, but you can't say no to everything just because they want to do the opposite. Sometimes it becomes just a power struggle. It's no longer about, what is this argument about anymore? What are we struggling about? No one even knows anymore. The point is that you should listen to me. And the argument, you know, and the flip side, the child is like, I'm not listening to you. I was teaching a group of teenagers this sort of parenting from this sort of model, right? And understanding their parents, because often we want our children to listen to us, but we want to help them understand us, you know, for a better relationship. So I was teaching a group of teenagers in this, and I said, have you ever broken the rules, you know, parents' rules? And they said, everyone in the room was like, yes. And I was like, okay, what sort of rules did you break? And one girl was like, you know, my mum tells us not to go out with wet hair. So guess what? I went out with wet hair. Another one was like, well, my mum told us not to come in the house with shoes on. So I walked in the house with shoes on. And I said, okay. I said, did you ever think about that rule and whether that was a good rule? And as they sat and processed it, like, they were like, yeah, it is a good rule, because I might get ill if I go out with cold hair, wet hair. It is a good rule to take shoes off the house, take shoes off in the house, because actually we pray in the house, so the house might get dirty. And I'm like, so if it's a good rule, why did you not listen to your parents? And they were like, because they were trying to control me. So the biggest struggle we have is this power struggle we get into with our children. And in the end, no one even knows if the rule is a good rule and what you're doing is actually something good for them, because they don't like to feel forced. Why? Because it goes against their very nature that they have a choice. See, even a young child, you can put food in their mouth. You could even physically force food into their mouth, but you can't make them swallow. You can bring a child to the prayer mat, but you can't make them pray. You can make a child sit to learn. You can teach, but you can't make them take it in. There's a free will there. And the sooner that we bring that free will into our parenting, the less the power struggles we have. So there it is, sisters. Those are my my introduction to Taqwa parenting. I've shared a lot there, and I'm just wondering, how are we doing for time? Let me keep it up there. Okay. Let me check the time. Oh, we're nearly at time N. So we did start 5 minutes later, and I hope that you don't mind me keeping you. I'm going to talk more about how to implement this in your parenting. But today I just wanted to give you the model, the concept, and seeing how we come away from it. I'm going to take 1 or 2 questions. Does anyone want to put them in the chat box, and then I will take them? Subhanallah, sisters, the message are coming in next so fast. Okay, so when is the next session? Exactly next week, next Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. I will send this recording out to everyone who registered today. How can I stop my boys from fighting? So we will talk about those sort of issues when we're talking about changing their behavior. I think that will be easier, because but I would like to throw that question back at you, sister. Understanding this model of parenting, how would you stop your children from fighting? So now I just want you to look at the problems you have. You all have different challenges. How will you now respond if you're bringing Allah into the equation? Okay, so that's a question for all of you, because you all have a challenge in mind. I want you to not look at trying to get the answer for a moment, and I want you to reframe the question. Someone's asking, how will you get the recording? I'm going to put the recording out on all the platforms that I put the invitation out. So whichever way you came is the way that you'll get the recording from that, inshallah. And you can share the recordings with people. I don't mind, inshallah. Is it too late to implement with your older children? No, not at all. In fact, I'm teaching this to adults, sisters. We're bringing not the parenting aspect only, but we're bringing the consciousness of Allah in our lives as adults. I'm doing this with sisters who are 30, 20, 30, 40, 50, in their 60s. It's never too late. As we're learning it, it's never too late. And the thing is, remember, when you bring Allah into your parenting, but into your relationships, it will end the struggles that you're struggling with. Now, there are some logistical things that we are going to go through, like, for example, your child not sleeping. That's logistical. But how you cope with that, if you think of that as a neutral thing, that's just happening neutral. How you respond to that is either going to be where you bring Allah into it and think good of Allah, like, well, Allah's going to give me the energy to get through the day. I'm going to be fine, It's Allah that gives energy, not sleep, right? It's Allah who gives me strength. It's, or you can, the opposite. You start thinking, negatively, but really that means badly of Allah, like, oh, how am I going to get through the day now? What's going to happen now? I'm going to end up being tired all day. I'm not going to get things done. And in fact, as you're saying that and you're doing that, what will happen is you'll feel more and more tired and you won't get things done. So whenever something happens, sisters, you can choose in that moment to reconcile with Allah, like take that problem, that struggle in that moment and connect your hearts back to Allah. And you will find an answer there, a reassurance, a comfort. You'll be able to kind of find a way forward. Or you can find that you'll get stuck because if you're in the questioning or the frustration or the despair, you find there's really nowhere to go but that. Sister Farah's asked a question, how do you console a child when she gets very emotional very fast? Now, we're all made differently. Okay, so some children are really emotional, sensitive in that they show it. Others, they don't show it. And others, they're not so aware of it. Okay? And so you've got to know your child. But here's the thing. I think the problem sometimes isn't knowing your child. I think the problem we often have is accepting your child. We all have an idea of how children should be, how they should cope with their emotions, how they should manage, how they should respond. Often there's this cultural idea that boys shouldn't cry and boys shouldn't, they should be strong and tough and keep it in. But then we have millions and millions of women complaining that their husbands do not talk to them and do not open up, and they feel disconnected from them. But yet, as parents, we have an idea that they should be like that. And then as wives, we think that they shouldn't be like that. However, as a child, if you can accept your child for who they are, rather than trying to change them, you will understand how to support them. Now we're going to talk about connecting, Sister Amina, with your children, especially, you're referring to older ones, in one of the sessions coming up in the next few weeks. It is week 3. So we'll talk about that, because we're going to go into so many different topics otherwise, and so many different questions, that we'll lose sight of what we've covered today. So I want to keep very much on you guys seeing your parenting under a different model, right? Now, we've come to the end of the time. I have some raised hands. Could you sisters please just pop it in the chat box, because that would be easier for me. 2 sisters raise your hand. If you wouldn't mind just putting a message in the chat box, and then I can pick it up. But I'll take one more, and then we will end it. One sister said that her child is very fixated with death, and as I said, that can happen if they've had an experience of death. So we all have this normal fear of the dark that comes in, or the fear of, because we suddenly become aware of things that we can't see that are there, right? Whereas if you think about a child's development when they're young and they're playing hide and seek, they only have to cover their eyes and they think that you can't see them. But then as their awareness changes, they realize actually stuff can lurk in the dark. They suddenly become scared of the dark. Same, we suddenly realize that people live and people die, and they know they don't come back. So at that point, most children, whenever that happens, that realization, do become worried about death. But if they also had an experience of death or separation, that can make them even more clingy, right? And even more fixated with death. But what you want to do is talk to your child about what is it that they fear happening and what would happen when that happens. Because through that, you'll see where they are not feeling secure, that I'm not going to be okay bit, and you can bring a line to it, as I gave in the earlier example, to help secure them. Okay? I'm going to leave it here, sisters. Jazakallah khair for your questions, your participation, for staying all the way through the end. I hope you've benefited. And I look forward to meeting you all again next week, inshallah, Tuesday at 10 a.m. UK time. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.